Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the AFVRC Championship for what is the penultimate round of the season, where we head to the UK's Monaco. We head to Oulton Park here for round 9. My name is Max Ring, and joining me alongside in the commentary box for the first time this season, it's Thomas Groves. How are you, Thomas, on this Wednesday evening?
I am very, very excited to get things started here. I watched a couple of races beforehand of this series. I've never seen Oulton Park described as Britain's Monaco, though I'll absolutely have it. We do need a Monaco equivalent in this country. But yeah, I'm super, super excited for tonight.
Yeah, it certainly should be. Of course, it's Britain's Monaco because of how narrow it is. It's a bit like Hungary on the F1 calendar, where that's called Monaco without the walls. But yeah, it's so narrow around this circuit. Qualifying can be very crucial around a circuit like this, and there are some big talking points before we head into qualifying. That is a lot of the frontrunners in the pro category are not here tonight. It's only Jack Goring really and Chris Pooley who are in championship contention who are here at this evening's event. No Ben Cullen, no Will Fawkes, who of course his streak came to an end at Knock Hill last week. And of course, Thomas, you've not got much experience driving this car, but you've had people, of course, tell you about the car. You've seen it as well be driven. Just what should we maybe be expecting around a circuit like Oulton Park here tonight?
Well, I think my main experience would be drawing from Porsche Carrera Cup Great Britain in the UK on the British Touring Car package. Yeah, a lot of. I think the thing with Porsche Cup is the reason it's so popular around the world in real life is because it just delivers amazing racing all the time. You know, we see it in the UK and we see it at Oulton Park. I mean, for me, Oulton is probably one of my favourite tracks in the UK because wherever you go, it seems to have that magic in its layout where whenever something comes to Oulton Park, sparks generally fly. It's a brilliant circuit, and yeah, as you said, I haven't driven the Porsche Cup car myself. But we are now underway, and I'm sure these guys very experienced. They've been racing here for many weeks with the AFVRC.
Yeah, they certainly have been, and of course these drivers are now getting underway for qualifying on the island version of this circuit. Of course, where we had pre-season testing as well, our little pre-season media day all coincided into one. And as you can see, there goes Chris Pooley. We've cut off the Britain chicane, so it's just a straight run all the way down into the Hislops chicane. And it should be a rather interesting qualifying session. Track limit warnings are going to be picked up, especially here through Knickerbrook and up into the likes of Druids. And also track limits can be picked up at Old Hall Corner, the first turn on the circuit. And here we are then with Jack Goring as he makes his way through that first right-hander. Of course, a very tricky corner to get right. A late apex, fastest lap, the benchmark at 1:30.5 for the championship leader, Ethan Lee, 7/10 back. Of course, these drivers at this stage will just be warming up their tyres slowly, building up in this session, just going to be constantly improving around a circuit like this as well, Thomas. It's a circuit which requires a lot of confidence. You need to be on the limit, and if you're not, you hemorrhage lap time around every single corner. It's just one of the more beautiful things about this circuit is just how fine that margin is between on the limit and stepping a little bit over it.
Oh, absolutely. No, and here, just as you mentioned that, we have a spinner. We have a car in the barriers. Looks like the front end's completely lifted off the car, and that's an immediate call back to the pits. Luckily, I think he's able to reset the car and get going again. But just very timely that incident there, Max. As we got, I do think, yeah, it's like you mentioned. It's the reason why it's such a brilliant track is because it's relatively narrow, as we mentioned at the top of the show. We haven't got the difficulty factors of the extra chicanes this time round, but it's a track where you do need to stay committed to. You know, especially if you like turns 1, 2, 3, you have to be really on the limit to get the lap time because you've got to run out so wide to use up all the track. But equally, if you get it wrong, you can get it really wrong, as we just saw. I do think the final sector of this lap is where the challenge really lies. We've got another fastest lap for Jack Goring, goes 10th quicker. With a 1:30.4, Ethan Lee moves up to second, just 3/10 pretty much exactly behind him. And I think what we're going to have to see today is really whoever's going to come out on top, it's going to be about who can just commit for the most and maintain that momentum. We've got a lot of high-speed corners here at Oulton Park, and that's kind of where the lap time is often found.
It certainly is indeed. Of course, that's where you got to have that confidence, where you got to be braver is through those higher speed corners. And of course, here we are heading down now into the third corner of the circuit. This is with, I believe, Dan Cross. It is Dan Cross, just making his way now through the next part of the track, down Cascades and into Island Bend. This is a really tricky part of the circuit. Car just naturally understeering through Island Bend, and then as you get into the Shells Oils corner, the hairpin, banked hairpin as well, it's so difficult to get the car stopped and be able to get it onto the brakes in time and get your car rotated through the corner. Of course, then it's just a flat-out blast all the way down into the Hislops chicane. And this is a tricky braking point to pick out even when you have the Britain chicane, but going that little bit faster makes it a little bit more difficult to find when you exactly need to brake. Of course, a lot of natural understeer through Knickerbrook as well, as it's a little bit off camber, and then heading up the hill as you make your way over into Druids Corner, which is the next of the final fast flowing corners. It's a very tricky double apex right-hander. Car instantly just wants to keep going to the left, keep pulling to that left-hand side and naturally understeer away from you. And as you make your way into Lodge Corner, the final part of the circuit, a blind apex, and you can see there's Cross just running a little bit wide, and around he goes. So Rob Cross goes off at the final corner, and now Dan Cross has gone off at the final corner as Chris Pauly hits the top of the times, a 10th.5 clear of Jack Goring.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been talking pretty much all the time about how difficult this track can be, except it really doesn't seem to be the case for Jack Goring and Chris Pauly, as you mentioned. You know, he's going we're that close to breaching the 1 minute 29 marker, just with 12 minutes to go in the session. I wonder how far we'll get down into that 129. It's definitely going to happen at some point. But yeah, it's like you mentioned, it can be a very difficult track at times. It's also incredibly fun, especially that final sector. I know for a fact that I've lost it at Druids and that many times over. It's that double apex hander where you can get that slight bit of understeer, get on the grass, and pretty much exactly what we saw there. Just have that bit of oversteer induced by the two wheels being on the grass, and then you go round. So it's certainly it's by no means an isolated mistake in terms of the fact that you're the only one doing it. We've all had our moments at Druids, I'm sure. At Oulton Park here, but no, I think we're seeing some really competitive times being laid down. I thought it would be Jack Goring who might just take this session by the scruff of the neck a bit here, but it's Chris Pauly who's kind of responded by going nearly 0.2 quicker than our championship leader in the pro category. I do think that 129. It's looking quite precarious. We've got a decent split amongst the top 7 in the pro category here, with Tom Stevens just 7/10 down in 7th place, but I think it looks to be, from the early kind of signs in terms of the pace and the kind of the deficit of these drivers, it should be a really competitive race tonight.
Yes, certainly should indeed. Something we haven't actually touched on so far this season is we do have a new AM driver hitting the track here tonight, currently 10th fastest overall. That is Ollie Wayne, as he now makes his way through Island Bend, and he's a newcomer with 2 rounds to go and is in that AM category, just looking to maybe embed himself into the league before you move on to another season, and just to have a little bit of fun, show what he can do before we end things off. But as it currently stands, it looks like Chris Pauly and Jack Goring are the main front runners for pole position here tonight. Got quite an even split here of AM and pro drivers here tonight. There is 8 pros, 8 AMs. And as we look now at Chris Pauly, as he makes his way through the Hislops chicane and into Knickerbrook, what is he going to be able to do? Can he find an improvement on that previous best of a 1 minute 30.028? As Jack Goring now just displaces that by around about 0.5 of a second. So if Pauly now, as he makes his way through Druids, bumping all the way over the curbs, a huge slide, just about keeps it on the road. He's got Ollie Wayne just in front of him. Adam Barron now goes up into 3rd fastest. He's 4/10 shy of Goring's overall lap time, but here comes Chris Pauly to the line. Is there still an improvement to be found, or has he lost too much over that bouncing moment through Druids? Druids as he went over that curb. He came across the line. Now, is it an improvement? It doesn't seem so, and unfortunately for Chris Pauly, I think all the time was lost at Druid's corner, and he's gone really wide through the first turn as well. So that's this lap over and done with, just showing that as you try to push the limits, those mistakes certainly can be made.
Exactly. I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's because the further this whole time goes down, the further we go into that 129 kind of bracket, the more you're going to have to push. That's a fact of sim racing. The faster you want to go, the more you have to push, and with that, you have to risk mistakes. But at the moment, Jack Doring seems to be the man who's been, without a single mistake that I could find, he's pretty much gone faster every single lap so far. With 9.5 minutes in the session, he should have about 5 or 6 more if he wants to go for it. I mean, look at the gap now. It's barely half a tenth between himself and Chris Pauly. I think these two are going to be the real ones to watch tonight as we go into the two races we have tonight. We've got a bit of a broadcast here, so you can see exactly what the telemetry of all our drivers are here. Looking like here is Ollie Wayne, the newcomer in the AM category. It's as you mentioned though, it's not necessarily about championship points, because of course you can't win a championship only competing in 2 rounds. But what you can do is bed yourself into the league, get into the community, become a known face, so when you go next season, people know exactly what you're going to be like, and just know you as a sim racer. Because of course these guys all know each other. They all know each other's ins and outs because they've been racing with each other for the past 9 weeks. So I mean that in itself brings an extra element of intrigue, because you might know as you mentioned earlier, we did pre-season testing here. You're going to know where your rivals are weaker, and you're going to know where you're stronger, and they're perhaps stronger. So you're able to use that to your advantage, because the way Porsche Cup racing is so close. I mean, some of these guys will have been sitting behind or sitting in front of other drivers by tenths of a second for many a lap, and you're just able to study what their moves are, what their lines are looking like, and if they are slightly faster than you, that's where you can get the advantage. Because if you take note of those lines and figure out how you can replicate that, well, that's just free lap time. But Ollie Wayne here, he's wasting no time in making himself introducing himself properly. He's already up to 3rd in class in the qualifying session in the AM category at the moment, behind Craig Ledoux and Glyn Berry, who is currently leading the AM category as we stand in qualifying. Quite close, it must be said, to the back of the pro class, because he's only about a tenth of a second off the last couple of runners. Like you look at Dan Cross and Tom Stevens, he's only about a tenth of a second off those two. So I mean, maybe we get some pro-am battling across the classes here, but what will Ollie One be able to do as he crosses the line that time? It will be another. You won't be able to necessarily improve, but you can just see the way all these guys are committing, and they are very much following each other's lines. There's a common kind of line they're all taking, common kind of patterns, and actually Chris Pauly just responds to Jack Goring there by going 42 hundredths of a second up on his time. So we're very much, 7 minutes just under to go, but qualifying is very much undecided as we stand.
Yep, certainly is indeed. It's all in the air for both sets of pole positions. And to quickly run you through the standings, I'll quickly do that just before we head into the dying embers of qualifying. It is Jack Goring who leads the way from Will Fawkes and Ben Cullen. They are 2nd and 3rd. They are actually tied on points, are Fawkes and Cullen, but they're both not here tonight, so that gives a perfect opportunity for Chris Pauly to have an opportunity to climb up into that top 2. Then we have Tom Stevens, Pete Plasto, Chris Boland, Red Baron, and also, Adam Barron, and then David Wrench rounding out that top 10. And then it's Forrest, Darville, Trumwhip, Barris, King, Andrews, Dan Cross, Matty Chambers, and then we have Crop, Slater, and Etok, who round out the 23 cars in that one. And then in the AM category, we have, I believe that is at the top of those standings, is going to be Josh Lindsay. Actually, no, it's going to be, of course, Mark Gladwell, who leads the way in that one. Then Scott Eastwood, Craig Ledoux, Glyn Berry, Joshua Lindsay, Bailey Vernon Higgs, Warmington, Scuts, and then we have Gray, Bunton, Miljack, Hastings, and Cross. So, of course, Cross had a not the greatest of starts to his campaign last time out, was unfortunately in the wars. He's been in the wars so far in this qualifying session, but he's not passed so far, and he's not too far off Scott Eastwood. There was someone off there at Druids, I believe that to be either Ethan Lee or Pete Plus. I know it's actually Dan Cross, I think, just getting back up to speed now. He was just off the road there, but Jack Goring hasn't been able to bring himself back into to contention for this pole position just yet. Have those tyres just hit that cliff? Have they gone over that peak performance slot? And are they slowly just starting to fade? Rob Cross has actually just gone in front of Eastwood. And as we look at Jack Goring heading into that first corner now, not much time left to go. And it's going to be interesting to see how Jack Goring does as James King comes into pit lane. Is that going to be the end of his session as he currently occupies third?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, 4 minutes to go, and I think the key thing is right now for Chris Pauly and Jack Goring, they've just got to keep on pushing and try and eke out as much lap time as possible, because yes, they're probably going to be both sharing the front row, but it's, you know, it gets you half a car in the head pole position. It puts you on the inside. And that just gives you that extra bit of a psychological advantage as well, of just having that pole position and being able to confirm that you are the faster driver, at least in this 18-minute or so session. And really, you know, being on that front row, you can avoid the carnage, you can get straight into the action. And I think really it will just be a battle of who gets off the line better between Chris Pauly and Jack Goring, because judging on the qualifying times, if they can run these laps consistently, goodness me, Jack Goring just with a moment there over the curbing, absolutely going pedal to the metal to try and take back pole position from Chris Pauly. We'll have to watch how he's storming through Druids there. He's got a couple of cars that might pose as traffic if he can close up to them enough, but I think he should have enough clear air to the point that the dirty air won't affect him too much as he comes to the final couple of corners. But to your point there, Mac, it's going to be very interesting to see what these guys can do over the course of these two races. Up towards the line, here comes Jack Goring with 3 minutes left. Can he improve? Not on that occasion, so he's going to have another attempt. He's got that clear air on the guys ahead. He's got clear air behind him, he's not going to be able to get disrupted by the dirty air or anything. But for the moment, though, it seems as though these two might just end up in a stalemate unless he can find some more lap time.
Yeah, it certainly is looking like it's going to be a stalemate at the moment for Chris Pauly. Continue on his fine run of form. Of course, last week was the only man who was on the podium twice, and is certainly, since this second half of the season begun, has looked like a completely different driver. And has he brought out the right? Has he played his cards right at the end of this season? Of course, this week's first pole position. So far, we've only seen either Goring or Will Fulks on that pole position spot all season long. This will be our third different pole sitter of the season if Pauly is able to hang on to this one. But as Jack Goring now makes his way heading up Clay Hill and into Druids Corner, he's got Ben Weston just in front of him. Is he going to be able to find the time in hand to take this one away from Chris Pauly? Eastwood moves himself up to 4th in class and 12th place overall. Tom Stevens moves himself up to 5th place overall. And so far, none of the AM drivers have closed up to the pro drivers, as in they've got themselves in amongst that pro field, which is quite unusual so far this season. Goring now to the line. Is there an improvement in lap time? Yes, there is. Goring now goes to the top of the time to 29.7 and is 2 tenths clear of Chris Pauly. So with only 1 minute 30 to go, I think Jack Goring, once he gets past Weston, will only have one last opportunity. And for Chris Pauly, now is never. He needs to get this one done. He needs to find an improvement either on this lap that he's just coming up to finish, or the start of this next lap, or it's going to be another Jack Goring pole position, and the championship leader can streak further clear if he's able to hold on to things into race 1.
Well, that time he did come round and set a time about nearly a tenth quicker, but he's still 1.5 off. So this lap, it's going to be all or nothing. You can see he's riding the curve massively as he goes down through the drop up towards Island Bend now. I mean, it's going to have to be absolutely on it as he comes through this lap. Down through Island, it's going to be really big that he maintains the momentum coming on the run towards. Here we are riding on board, staying in 4th gear, shifts into 5 momentarily just to get that extra couple of miles an hour before the turn-in. This looks like a strong lap to me, the way he's not necessarily having to fight the car. He seems to be working with it in perfect symmetry at the moment, perfect symphony. Runs past the chicane there that we're not using this weekend. Now down towards Hislop. It's going to be huge but he gets on the brakes as late as possible. Make sure he doesn't clip that tyre barrier, which nobody has done so far today, which is very, very commendable. Now it's going to be about, can he just get that turn in that he needs to do through Nickerbrook, which yes he can, running up towards the final couple of corners of his lap. It looks to be a good one. What will Jack Goring be able to do? Because of course he's going to set a time before Paulie comes through Druids. Is nice and slight bit of oversteer there, has to correct by a slight bit, but manages to hold it on. One more corner to navigate, the blind crest up towards the hill, sticks it nice in early, gets on the corner, but he's gone wide. That's probably lost him a lap. A bit of oversteer on corner exit. What's it going to be as he comes up towards the line? He's given it absolutely everything, but it will not be an improvement for Chris Paulie. So Jack Goring on pole once again, the championship leader, as he closes in on what could well be a full-on title in the Pro-Am class. On the last lap, Craig Ledoux has gone up as the pole position for the Am class runners as Ethan Lee works his final lap through Druids. So Craig Ledoux goes up to just under a second off Goring's time, but he overtakes Dan Cross in the final lap to get that pole position in the Am category. He will be starting alongside the Pro runners ahead of race 1. Here is Ethan Lee on his final lap. What's he going to be able to produce? He's currently sitting 6 tenths down, but a couple of tenths of an improvement. Could well promoted to third because James King, as we mentioned, he's gone into the pits. He's confident with what he was able to produce. So now it's about what Ethan Lee can do and see if he can dethrone that 4th place from King, or maybe even get past Tom Stevens, because he's only 5,000 of a second off of Tom there in 5th place. He's running up towards Druids now. It's going to have to be all commitment. Could he use a bit more track on corner entry there? Running up towards the line. What's it going to be? No, he's not actually going to take it. He's not going to take it. I thought for all the world that was a competitive lap time he was about to set, but in the end has to pull in. So that is your grid you can see on your screen right now. Jack Goring will start alongside Chris Farley on pole position as we look towards the rest of the field. 4 tenths down is Pete Plaster with James King there in 4th. But it was an overall very, very enjoyable qualifying session, Max.
Yeah, it certainly was indeed a very good qualifying session. Once again, the championship leader takes pole position, and I believe if things go his way here tonight, he could actually potentially wrap up the title. I will just confirm that a little bit later on, but it is Goring who takes that top spot from Paulie, Plasto, King, Stevens, Lee, Barron, Cross. They are your top 8. They are all the pro category. You've got David Wrench in as well, but he wasn't able to set a lap time. He joined a little bit too late. But then we've got in the Am category, Ledoux, Bury, and then the rest of the field is Ollie Wayne, Mark Gladwell, Eastwood, Cross, Weston, and Lindsay, the ones to set a time. But we do have, I have seen him on circuit, David Wrench in tonight as well, but he'll be starting from the very back. Of course, we're now just going to be getting underway on the grid. Drivers just getting themselves gridded. We're just about to get into race 1 here at Oulton Park. Going to be a difficult one for drivers to make overtakes, of course, with a lot of fast flowing corners. And it should be quite an interesting one indeed. And for, of course, Jack Goring, a perfect opportunity in that championship lead to extend it ever further, especially with the fact that Cullen and Fulks are not here tonight. But, of course, for Jack Goring, he still needs to get this one to the line. We saw a couple mistakes in those qualifying sessions from everyone, and we could see it once again here for the likes of Goring or Paulie. A good qualifying session as well from Pete Plasto, who's lined up 3rd, and also quite a decent qualifying session in the Am category for Craig Ledoux once again. He is certainly quick over 1 lap, just doesn't have the consistency over a race format, does Ledoux. So we'll be looking to try and add to his 2 race wins in the Am category so far this season with another shot at that P1. But of course, he also holds the record for the highest Am qualifying driver, as in we saw in Spa. He lined up on the front row alongside Will Fulks in that one, but that didn't last too long. And hopefully for Ledoux, his race will go a lot better here tonight. It is Goring and Paulie on the front row of the grid. 20 minutes here for race 1. It's about to get underway, and we are underway here in Oulton Park, and Goring goes instantly on the defensive, but Paulie with a great launch as we make our way into that first corner. They're side by side, and Paulie pulls straight ahead as we make it through the first corner and head down into Cascades. Pasto able to hold on to third, Stevens but able to hold on to fourth place as well as they make the run now into Cascades and about the drive now all the way down to Island Bend. The slipstream will be working into Jack Goring's favour, but a dream gets away from second on the grid there for Chris Paulie, who's able to take the race lead into that first corner, and Goring struggling on the race start has cost him dear. A better second phase to the launch for the number 1 machine. And as we look further back, of course, David Wrench and Adrian Warmington have both been able to join the session, so they are at the back of this field. And as we make our way out of the hairpin for the first time and make our way into the Hislop chicane, as we see James King under a lot of pressure here from Ethan Lee as they run side by side down into Hislops. There's Lee late on the brakes, and King, no defence there from that one. It's actually just behind him. Adam Barron nearly off into the grass in avoidance. Dan Cross trying to swoop it around the outside. Just was not able to get a move done there. Adam Barron is able to hold on to that 7th place, and just behind Cross it looks like Glenn Burry has been able to jump Craig the Jew off the front as well, because he has now made his way up into 9th place.
Yeah, and Glyn Burry just taking the AM-class lead there off the start. He's only a few tenths ahead of Craig Ledoux, but there's already been a change for the lead in that category side by side into the final corner there. It might not be the best idea because again it's hard to run that kind of line through there, but no, that's a great move there. I think that's Adam Barron possibly on Glyn Burry, speaking of which. So there's an AM-class lead change, but Chris Paulie, as you mentioned, managed to get the lead off of Jack Goring, and he set away half a second. The gap is now, as we start the second lap, 2 minutes already in the books. There I can see is Ollie Wayne right on the back of Randy. So this AM-class battle is quite intense at the moment. The newcomer might be trying to take P2 in class at the moment. Not going to quite have the run to try and think into Island Bend. It's very much a single file then, because the way you're washing out wide before corner entry. As we look at the number 87 who goes slightly wide near Island Bend, he's going to lose a couple of positions there. So that is Glyn Berry, an awful start for him in the AM category. He's lost the lead. I think he's lost second, third place as well in the category. So he needs to try and work his way back up the field. He's got Ollie Wayne behind him, who's no doubt wanting to make an impression, and a good impression at that, on his debut in the series. But so far, very clean. I say that, but Wayne goes wide. He's just loses the rear out of the run of the Hislop chicane. There he is, side by side with, I think, one of the Amclark with that's Ben Weston. He's side by side. He will take to the grass for just a moment. They're side by side running into Druids. How many times will this scene not work out? But in the end, Wayne will just about hold on to the that kind of other position. I think he was winning with Ben Weston trying to take his what is now 14th position. So Ollie Wayne gets it all wrong out of Hislops, and on debut now has to try and come up with some sort of a comeback drive as Chris Paulie sets a new fastest lap on lap 2. It's going to be a 1:30.4. It's about half a second off their qualifying lap times, but they're running with more fuel than they were in qualifying, so that is to be expected. But at the front of the race, Chris Paulie has established his lead, Max.
Yes, he certainly has indeed. Half a second separates that top 2, and we now look at James King as he runs behind Ethan Lee. This, of course, is for 5th place overall and 5th place in that pro category. So we make our way now into that hairpin and then make our way down the long straight. Oh, a bit of a snap there for James King. And look at the run. Ethan Lee just got out of the hairpin there as David Wrench a little bit further back is squabbling with Ben Weston. And it is Wrench who is just able to streak in front. It's now side by side as they're about to head down into the Hislop chicane in a few moments' time, but he just was able to get the run, and he's now going to be able to just pull further ahead, and that is David Wrench now up to 15th overall, and he is, of course, in 9th in class still, but goes wide through the Hislops, and that's allowed Weston straight back through. Lindsay also trying to have an opportunity to sneak his nose back to the inside as well, but just nothing doing there. But for Chris Paulie, he's 3 tenths clear of Jack Goring at the moment. So Goring has fought back over the course of this lap here, Thomas, and we could see a titanic scrap between the pair. The only issue here is for Goring, this circuit, it's so difficult to make overtakes if you're very even on pace.
Well, I mean, to your point, we're seeing an overtake right here through Druids. I think that is Ben Weston and Dave Wrench battling once again with Joshua Lindsay right behind them. So Wrench is going to have the run up towards turn one. Is he going to go for the move though? Because it's a low percentage move really when you think about it. Running into turn one, you can try it many times, but the way the racing line just converges on the inside of the corner on corner exit, it means you're really having to stick your throttle out wide if you're going to try and make a move around the outside or up the inside. But for the moment, it seems like Wrench is kind of consolidated that position, as here we have the battle for the race lead. It's much closer than I thought it was. Jack Goring not letting Chris Pauly get away by any measure of the imagination. They've got Pete Plasto right behind them waiting in case either of these two make mistakes. So really it's a consistent gap that's starting to form. The Dirty Air will of course be playing its part here on our racing, but it seems like we have a top three just starting to emerge there as they all get through the Hislop chicane cleanly once again. What Plasto is going to need now is a really solid run up on Jack Goring, but Goring seems to have a run on Chris Pauly as well. So it's to your point, it is about the slipstream here, and you need to kind of close up through these twisty tight sector one and then try and just stay as close as you can to the rear of the car ahead through sectors 2 and 3, especially look the kind of corners you have like Druids here, where it's you've got to really try and stay up close to the back, and that actually might be what Jack Goring's doing here. Look at the gap, it's closed up now to about 0.2 of a second, you can see on your screen. So Chris Pauly's going to have to go defensive into turn one, but I think he's going to be able to see this one out, which he will do for the moment. Pete Plaston, meanwhile, that's the fastest lap of the race, a 1:29.8. So already we're matching qualifying times. We're almost going underneath that qualifying time we set. Plasto's very much staying with these three. It's a 2.5 second gap back to Tom Stevens, leading the rest of the field. Here is Jack Goring, who's almost pushing Chris Pauly through towards Island Bend. Is he going to have a look on the inside? He'd be foolhardy to do so. He is going to have a look on the inside, and oh no, it's gone off, it's rather than touch. Oh no, Jack Goring and Chris Pauly collide at Island Bend. That's a line. Tom Stevens to close right up on them, who's going to go to the inside of Goring for the moment as Pauly gets away with it. I think he's going to hold his position, but on the inside will go Tom Stevens up towards the Hislop chicane. Is Jack Goring going to fight this as they go down towards it? Goring tries to outbrake the side by side through the chicane. Is there going to be contact? No. Goring gets back ahead and will consolidate his position as they go through the Knickerbrick corner. My voice is somewhat dying. It's been a long day for me, but at the moment it's race leader Pete Plasto who's taking advantage of the contact between the two race leaders. Adam Barron seems to have gone into the pits at the moment, but goodness me, Max, what did we just see there?
That was disaster for both Pauly and Goring. It was a very opportunistic lunge from Jack Goring. There just was not a gap there for the number 108 machine. And unfortunately, Goring was an innocent bystander in that one, and there was nothing he could have done about it. So it's now just try and catch up to Pete Plasto and try and bring that race lead down. And for Adam Barron, I think he might have clipped that tyre barrier, and that's why he's got picked up a meatball flag and is into the pit lane now for repairs. But for Pete Plasto, that was a dream for him. He's looking to pick up his first race victory of the season. And can he pull that off here in race one? For Chris Pauly, it'll be another podium, and once again, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, is the story of Chris Pauly. Not only this season in the sim racing AFVRC, but also in the real world AFVRC season, as well as what he mentioned last time out in Knock Hill. Can he bring that gap back down? It's 1.3 seconds currently. So he has brought it down ever so slightly. And I think we will see a bit of an angry Chris Pauly behind the wheel of that number one machine here, Thomas, because of what just happened with Goring. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing him set fastest lap after fastest lap.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Pauly very much got away with that one, and he'll think of himself as kind of the innocent party, because it was Goring's move that I said was foolhardy, and then he obviously went and did it into Island Bend, which at the best of times, that's a bit of a Hail Mary to try and play, but obviously there was contact. We don't know if there was damage. It doesn't really seem like it. You know, the way they two made contact going into the gravel, I thought one of them might have picked up a bit of steering damage potentially, especially with the way their wheels would have been angled going into Island Bend. But no, look at that. Chris Pauly, you mentioned he might be a man on a charge. He's just set the fastest lap once again at 1:29.818, about 800th of a second quicker than his previous best, or quicker than Pete Plasto's previous best. So he is on a bit of a charge at the moment, as we mentioned. The gap's holding though, about 1.3 seconds. It was at the start of the last lap. It is now of this lap, so he's not really making too much of an inroad in there. Neither is really Jack Goring, because he got back past Tom Stevens in that amazing action we saw at the Hislop chicane, and since then he's not really been able to make much of an inroad into his championship rival. But Pete Plasto will still hold this race lead by about 1.2 seconds. Behind them, I think that's Ethan Lee and James King are starting to close up on one another, so that could be a battle. It'll be interesting to follow as we go through the rest of the race. Confirmation that Adam Barron, I think he did clip that Hislop's kind of tyre barrier, because he's being recorded as 17th, down 26 seconds. So used his fast repair most likely, back out on track. Meanwhile, I'll draw to your attention to Mr. David Wrench, who started right at the back of the field. He's already made his way up to 12th place overall. He could well. He's only about 10 seconds back with 9 minutes remaining from the back end of the pro field. He could well climb a few more positions and easily score a top 10 here now.
Oh, he certainly can indeed, David Wrench. He's someone who has a lot of pace in this division, of course. Was second in those pro standings before a no-show a few weeks ago. And that really derailed his momentum as Jack Goring now sets the fastest lap of this race. That gap between the top two has come down to 1.1. It is closing between Plasto and Paulie, but Plasto knows that this is the best circuit you can be leading in because of how narrow it is, because you can defend so easily around here. As, of course, for Plasto, he's looking at his first race victory. The only driver to actually pick up race victories in that pro category this season are either Will Fultz or Jack Goring. And for Plasto, he is now just trying to hold on. That gap now 9/10. It is certainly getting closer and closer. With Paulie getting closer, he's pulling Goring along in that slipstream as well. As we make our way down into the Hislop chicane, Plasto is certainly in the prime opportunity though to take this race victory. 8 minutes and 20 to go now, so there's still, I would say, around about 5 or 6 laps remaining in this one, but it's still just be all the way down to the wire. And is Paulie got to be able to get close enough for a lunge onto Plasto at least on that final lap?
Quite possibly, Max. I mean, look at the gap that it's sitting at now. It's come down by about 3/10 over the last 2 laps, so it is closing somewhat, but it is very much closing at not quite as fast of a rate as we might have thought, because Pete Plasto, he's been definitely on the pace all throughout this one. We expected, I think, possibly Paulie and Goring to run away with it, and that's kind of how it was looking at the very start of this field, as we've got a brand new fastest lap. To your point, Chris Paulie goes almost 4/10 quicker than the previous fast lap that he owned, I might add. So these two are definitely closing in. The gap's now well under a second. It's in the 9/10 barrier quite comfortably. Goring, meanwhile, is closing up. The gap's about 7/10 between those two. So as you might be right. We might see these three come together. Perhaps not literally, hopefully not literally. We've already seen enough contact, I think, in this race. But towards the end of the race, it could get quite tense between those three. Here, then, I think, is possibly the battle for second in the AM category, is what I'm seeing. Mark Gladwell. Sorry, that isn't Mark Gladwell at all. That's, I'm just trying to see who that might be. I think it's Scott Eastwood leading this train of AM cars. At the moment, with Ben Weston and Joshua Lindsay. No, it's Ethan Lee. My mistake. It's Ethan Lee. Ethan Lee. They're running this kind of gaggle of 4 cars up through Nickelbrook, up towards Druids. That's going to be that would be Dan Cross. No, it would be James King. Sorry, who is going to have a nice run through Druids. He might well have a good run, because there goes wide to Ethan Lee. I think there was contact between King and him running into the back of Lee, running in through Druids. Dan Cross is going to close right up on behind these two. There could well be a move on up towards turn 1, because Cross is really closing on James King as a result of the contact. I should think there may be damage on the front of James King's car. Of course, no fault of his own that the contact was made with Ethan Lee, who just got caught wide out, caught out by the corner that is Druids, and so manages to hold on to it very commendably, actually, and keep the position as well, crucially. But Cross is all over the back of James King at the moment. He's going to pull out ahead of the left-hander down towards Ireland Bend. He's going to be on the inside. It might well be the move here for Dan Cross to move himself up into 6th place, which is exactly what he will do. And there will be nothing that James King can fight it about as they run down towards Ireland Bend. So still more action all throughout the pro field, as these sort of gaggle of 4 cars starts to open up the gaps between each other. But at the moment, it's King who's still racing, trying to catch back Dan Cross. We've had a collision at the back of the pro category, the AM category, Scott Eastwood there, just making contact with another car. I think that would be Joshua Lindsay. Indeed, it is. So 8th and 9th in the AM category. They've come together after the crane of curves, and now they're starting to having to try and make their way back through the field. David Wrench, we mentioned him earlier. Look where he is now. He's up to 11th place already. He's got Ollie Wayne, the brand new superstar of the AM category, in his sights. I would suggest that would be a move he can complete inside the time limit because he's clearly got quite a modicum of pace about him. Adam Barron, meanwhile, he's recovered from that earlier crash, helped no doubt by Cross, Eastwood, and Warmington and Lindsay. They've all been involved in various incidents, from what I can gather throughout this one. So that'll have helped him, but he's up to 14th overall at the moment. Still last in the pro category for the moment, but I think he's going to be just pleased with the fact he's gained some positions. Of course, he made that contact earlier on, and now it's a bit of a damage limitation run for him as far as the point standings are concerned. Up at the front, it's still Pete Plasto with 7/10 of a lead, now 6/10 of a lead. So these two are starting to close up, and look at we've got now. We mentioned Jack Goring, he's a race winner in this series. Chris Pauly has yet to win, and perhaps we're seeing why, because look at that, Jack Goring, he's going to go close up towards his lop chicane. Is there going to be more drama, or will Goring just stay behind? He will stay behind for the moment, Max. But what a race we're seeing so far. These two have come together once again, and they're about to deliver some fireworks, I think.
Yeah, they certainly are indeed. And now for, of course, Chris Pauly. He's really got to start to close up to the back of Pete Plasto. Maybe his best form of defence will be attack from Jack Goring behind. Of course, for either Plasto or Pauly, it will be their first race victories of the season. For Jack Goring, it will add another one to his illustrious tally, but goes wide through Lodge Corner, and that is undone all the hard work he's just put it in to try and close up into Chris Pauly's wheel tracks. As we see now, Ethan Lee will have the back of Tom Stevens. Can he get this move done as he looks to the outside line for the first corner? Is he going to be able to pull this one off? Around the outside is a very ambitious overtaking opportunity. He's just not got it done, but will try get the up and under. And as they head down into Cascades, will it be a lunge to the inside here? It's nearly onto the grass. He just was not able to get it done, with now Dan Cross all over the back of him, as well as he's been able to get past on James King. Talk about King, he just runs wide on the exit of Cascades. There is Lee looking to the outside now through the island bend. That's going to compromise, of course, Tom Stevens' run all the way now into the hairpin, trying to find a gap, but no move possible there for Ethan Lee, and he has to sit in that 5th place in class for now. Of course, these guys all fighting for 4th place overall, and you've got to look out for behind this gag of the cars as well. There's Craig Lejeune, who is not too far off the back of James King. As we head down into the Hislop chicane, no one going for an overtake. Once again, Tom Stevens just parking his car absolutely perfectly, knowing exactly where he needs to be to hold on to this 4th place.
I mean, it's a great battle what we're seeing at the moment. Ethan Lee actually, he might have lost the run on Tom Stevens through the Hislop chicane. I think Stevens just got a slightly better exit, and that's helped him just bridge the gap, because now it's Dan Cross is all over the back of Ethan Lee. He might be able to have a move down into Lodge Corner. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think he's going to be able to quite go for it, though. Breaking his own approach is too early. Also, just to kind of look at that in the background, you've got Cross and Lee fighting at the moment, but James King is still there. He's closing back up after that little bit moment at Cascades, as you mentioned. I think he's also bringing along Craig Ledoux with him, so we could be looking at a 5-way fight in a moment. But for now, it is these three that are entertaining us, and entertaining us some more. But I will say that Pete Plasto, he's only got 0.3 of a second on Chris Pauly, so we mentioned that this might go right down to the wire. It seems like it's going to do exactly that. Focusing back on these guys, though. So Stevens is ahead, but Cross goes left, goes right. Is he going to go left again? Not quite. So as he's going to run down towards Island Bend, these three are still almost absolutely together. Cross had a couple of looks at it there, but decided to go better. Perhaps he had a premonition of sort of incident that Goring had earlier. So Tom Stevens not entirely cleared these guys, and these guys are almost not clear of Craig Ledoux, who's really closing up on them as the battling is losing them time. Crosser goes again, looks to the left, looks to the right. There's contact with Ethan Lee, who cuts across the game momentarily, overtakes Tom Stevens, and will have to rejoin and lose that position as he's going to. Pulls over to the side of the track, lets Tom Stevens back through. Is that lot of momentum going to cost him up towards Dan Cross, who gets past on James King, who's right there with him. And look at that, as I mentioned, Ledoux and King are right there up with these guys now as a result. And Tom Stevens is the man who, having nearly been sideswiped completely by an outbreak to Ethan Lee, who's managed to break away from the field here. And then there it is, Lee, Cross, King and Ledoux. As we head on to the final lap, it's going to be an incredible one. We've had 20 minutes of great action, Max. But look at these, they're almost absolutely together going into turn one.
They certainly are indeed. There's cross to the outside of Ethan Lee, and he's just not able to get the move done just yet, but Lee runs wide. There's nearly contact, and somehow they're both facing in the right direction, and Cross is now finally ahead of Ethan Lee, who's had a shocking last lap of this race, well, penultimate lap of this race. He got tagged up the back there from Dan Cross and then went straight across the Hislop chicane. I want to point out brilliant avoidance from Tom Stevens out in front of the field. It's only 2 tenths that separate Plastow and Chris Pooley, and it's all about this slipstream now. The battle for the race lead comes down to the number 312 and the number 1. He's looking to the outside line. Is it going to be Pete Plastow who's going to be able to hold it onto this one? It certainly seems likely at this current stage. And for Chris Pooley, he looks to the through Knickerbocker and up the Clay Hill we shall go. And at the moment, the last overtaking opportunity for Chris Pooley will be Lodge Corner. He will need a magnificent run out of Druids Corner into Lodge, that final turn on the circuit, and he just doesn't seem to have the legs to do so. And for Pete Plastow, he has also, just like Chris Pooley, been the nearly man on the podium, but just never had the opportunity to take the battle to the likes of Fulks or Jack Goring. But we finally have a third different winner of the season, and it is going to be Pete Plastow, who comes into a stroke of luck here in Oulton Park and takes race 1 here this evening. A spectacular drive from the 132, who brings it home just about in front of Chris Pooley after a ragged race at the very end of that one. Very, very tense indeed, as it's then Jack Goring, Tom Stevens, Dan Cross, Ethan Lee, James King and Ledoux is finally back on the top step here in the AM category. Spectacular stuff there from Craig, as he is finally able to convert a pole position in class to a race victory. David Wrench is able to get up into that top 10. He finishes in 10th, and it's Mark Gladwell, Ollie Waynes, who finishes 4th in class on his debut. Then Adam Barrett, Ben Weston, Rob Cross, Scott Eastwood, Warmington and Lindsay. But Thomas, that was a spectacular drive there from Plastow, who capitalised on Pooley and Goring making contact. And unfortunately for Chris Pooley, no matter what he threw on that final lap, Plastow had a response. And here are your race results after the first race of the penultimate round here at Oulton Park.
As you mentioned, though, it's Pete Plastow who takes the overall win. I mean, you say it was luck. I say it was. I mean, what do we call it? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and that's exactly what it was for Pete Plastow. A very, very well-deserved win, because the defending he had to do over Chris Pooley, who will finish second, was quite incredible. Jack Goring then has to settle for third, but it's still the podium position for the championship leader. Tom Stevens all on his own in fourth, behind of Dan Cross, Ethan Lee, James King, who will finish as they started the last lap. We saw that action there unfold. Craig Ledoux will take the AM win after another couple of weeks out of there, ahead of Glenbury by about 5 seconds ahead of David Wrench, who managed to get into the top 10 after a brilliant comeback from all the way from 18th. Mark Gladwell is 11th in the AM category. Ollie Wayne on debut in the AFVRC Championship will take home a fine 12th and 5th in the AM class, ahead of Adam Barron, who will again have to fight his way back from earlier collision with the Hislops barrier that we mentioned at the top of the show. Ben Weston in 14th, ahead of Robert Cross in 15th. Scott Eastwood in 16th, and these are the guys who had those coming togethers at the earlier part of the race at Cascades. Adrian Warmington 17th, and rounding out the field 55 seconds back is Joshua Lindsay in 18th.
Yeah, not the greatest of races there for Josh Lindsay or Scott Eastwood in their own championship perspectives. But, ladies and gentlemen, you know what this means now. It is time for the wheel spin for, of course, the second race, the reverse grid draw. And we shall see what happens. So, Thomas, as we spin the wheel now, what is your prediction for what number we're going to pull?
What was it? We said Ollie Wayne got 12th, and there is the number 12 on this wheel. Why not? I'm going to go for Ollie Wayne.
I'm going to go for a number 8 today. Craig Ledoux on pole for the second race. So as the wheel spins now, what's it going to be? Drum roll, please. It's going to be the number 6. We have a thing about number 6s. Of course, last time we were a little bit cheeky and did a respin. Not sure if that's going to be the case here today. So, and on the Jack Goring front, of course, I was double checking if he can win the title here tonight. It's still unsure, but of course, with Will Fulks not turning up tonight, does make things ever so more likely. So it is the number 6. So 6th place in that race was actually Dan Cross. No, it was actually Ethan Lee, I believe. So Ethan Lee getting punted on the penultimate lap, then getting, of course, overtaken by Dan Cross. It works in his favour because he's on pole now for the final for the penultimate race. Sorry, the final race of the evening, and then the penultimate round.
Indeed. Well, I mean, that's going to be quite the battle then between them two. So I'm just really looking forward to this. I've never really seen a reverse grid race in terms of iRacing before, so very much looking forward to see what it throws up. I think the key thing now will be, because it's reverse grid, Goring is going to be ahead in that kind of top 3 of those guys we mentioned who look to be the pace of the field in qualifying and in race 1. He's going to be the best placed of those top 3 we mentioned, of him, Chris Pauly, and Pete Plansdown, so the race winner. So that's going to be quite interesting. He's the championship leader. We've mentioned that Will Fulks not here tonight to contest the crown. So that could be quite something that swings very much in his favour as we head into race 2.
It certainly could indeed, but we will have some driver interviews while we wait for race 2. So let's start with Chris Pauly and see what he has to say after what was an unfortunate second place. Could have been a race victory. Hello, Chris. Can you hear us?
Good evening, gents. How's it going?
Good evening. Good evening. Well, I'm good. Thank you, Chris. How are you after that one? I bet a little bit disheartened after that. Once again, like you mentioned last week, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Just about to say the same. Yeah, that first win of the season was within about 0.3 of a second today, but not to be honest, just glad that Jack and I managed to get out of that little incident unscathed, and yeah, ultimately it was a cracking race and required kind of maximum focus for the whole 20 minutes.
Yeah, it certainly did indeed. It was quite a nice start from you, of course, in that heading into turn 1. You were able to get past Jack. Was that the second phase of the start? Because it looked like you had quite an even launch to begin with, and then all of a sudden you were just able to really, once you got the acceleration up, you were able just to really blast past him before you really even got to the first corner.
Yeah, these Porsches use a second clutch, which you can map, and I think we both got a kind of similar start. We must have a similar bite point on that. But then, as you said, in the second phase, once you're down to your kind of manual clutch, I just seemed to get slightly better traction, just enough to get my nose into the first corner, and Jack gave us, a fair amount of space. So, yeah, pretty happy with how the start went.
Repeat that in race 2, and of course, I don't want to bring it up too much, but that incident there with Goring, of course, you've probably not seen it back or anything, but inside the car, what was your views on it? What did you think of that incident into the hairpin?
Yeah, to be fair, we've had a chat about it. I mean, it was quite a late lunge, but and he didn't get it stopped, but he was unlucky to get a wheel on the grass. So it's one of them. I probably would have gone for the same thing as well. Fortunately for both of us, he didn't take us out of the race, and we managed to maintain that kind of podium for both of us. So while it's obviously frustrating not to be fighting or to be so close to the win, I think ultimately I'm pretty happy with second place coming out of this race.
Again, another podium to add to the streak. And one last one before I pass you over to Thomas is just what was it like trying to hunt down? Well, it's more of a two-parter. What was it like trying to hunt down Pete for that race victory? And also, what do you hope will happen in race 2?
You know what? I love it. I love being the chaser and hunting someone down, especially when you've just had kind of a disappointing incident or something like that, and you're kind of fired up, and it just puts you into that zone, and I absolutely love that. I just credit to Pete and Jack as well. Neither of them were making any mistakes, so the ultimate pressure from Jack behind, and then just not seeing any kind of gap to get past Pete. In terms of race 2, I don't know where I'm starting at the minute. I'm hoping for
fifth place, I believe.
5th place. Okay, that's good. So again, I'll pray for a good start. But it's a tricky circuit to overtake on. So at this stage of the season, see what happens. Not go for any crazy lunges and just try and stay on track. It's a narrow, bumpy circuit. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we certainly will indeed. But that's it from me, Chris. Is there any questions from you, Thomas?
Mainly, I have to ask it. You're starting behind Jack Goring, so you're kind of in the opposite position now. What's your thought process going to be into turn 1? Are you going to go for any early lunges, or are you going to try and methodically make your way past?
You know what? With kind of 5 cars in front of you, it's always tricky, especially at Oulton Park. So just keep it on the track, keep safe, stay out of any instance. You know, it's what seemed to work last week at Knockhill, and we'll try the same.
And just one more: is Pete Plasto? Is he now in your mind as a potential threat going into turn 1, or are you very much focusing on trying to get past Jack and seeing what you can do from there?
You know, Pete's got so much experience, and he's such a clean, smart racer. So to be honest, it's always a pleasure being around Pete. You kind of got that trust that he's not going to send anything stupid. And to be fair, the same for Jack. It was, you know, a move that I would have gone for as well. So yeah, just I think hopefully, you know, a couple of us can kind of make it to the front. Fingers crossed, get in that podium position. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we certainly shall indeed. But yeah, thank you, Chris, and good luck in race 2.
Thanks, Eds. Bye.
Right, so that was Chris Pauly. We're now going to bring in the race winner of race 1, Pete Plasto. So, if Discord allows me to pull him in. Oh, no, I think he's just left the interview room. So, we won't hear from Pete Plasto in this one. So, that's unfortunate. Oh, he might have just disconnected because I'm hearing he might have left from practice as well. But from Chris Pauly there, it was we got an idea on that incident with Jack Goring, and it just seemed, from his point of view as well, it's just one of those unfortunate incidents in racing where you go for a gap that is there, but it's not really. Get a tyre onto the grass, and it's a move that 99% of drivers would have at least tried, because it's, of course, you see the opportunity, you see the gap, you think golden ticket, and sometimes it just don't work out.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we mentioned it before. It's the moniker of the UK. It's a super narrow track, and really all it was there was, you know, Jack was absolutely going for it. Got a wheel on the grass, and of course, you know, that's just going to affect your traction slightly going into the corner. Runs slightly, unfortunately, into Chris there, but they both got away well. They both kind of recovered it, and so it wasn't too detrimental to their races. So that was kind of the good thing that came out of that. Of course, it gifted Pete Plasto the win, who we're unfortunately not able to speak to before this second race. But no, I think again, it's a racing incident. It could look it could look a bit suspicious, or not suspicious, but you know what I mean, like just a bit unfortunate. But no, I think it's just, I mean, it's one of those ones where it happens in real life. We see it so often where somebody would just run wide on the run down towards Ireland on that grass, and then you are, you know, facing a whole different question of, are you going to ram it into someone's side? But thankfully, they kind of, you know, smoothed it over very, very quickly, got back to racing, and from there they gave us a brilliant showdown.
Yeah, they certainly did indeed. It was a very good race to end it off in the end. Even after that contact, they were able to bring it back into Pete's point of view and everything. They were able to really reel in that race leader. And Jack, of course, he just didn't take it too much. He didn't get into his own head too much either, and he was just trying to hunt down, of course, Pete as well. It's just, of course, with this circuit being so narrow, being so difficult to make those moves at, it does mean those mistakes can happen. But of course, as we head into race 2, it is going to be Ethan Lee on that pole position here, Thomas, and of course alongside him will be Dan Cross. Of course, they had a little bit of controversy near the end of race 1, so it's going to be quite interesting how they get underway to things here in race 2. It seemed like Cross maybe had a bit more late race pace, but in the opening stages it looked like Lee was able to streak that little bit further clear. So in that clean air, could be rather interesting here for the pair of them to see how the race shapes up.
Simply, I'm really looking forward to see what Ethan Lee can do off the start. I think he showed a lot of promise in that first race in qualifying. You know, he maybe wasn't the fastest guy in the field, but he certainly showed he's got enough to stick with those guys. And of course, we saw Tom Stevens kind of have the advantage after that little incident at Hislops. So potentially he's starting right up near the front as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting into turn one between those guys. Tom Stevens will surely be thinking he's got the three main guys behind, with a couple of cars of a buffer as well. I think for him, he'll be definitely eyeing this one up as potentially a podium or even a win.
Oh yes, certainly will be indeed. You can see the drivers are just getting ready to grid up. I'll quickly run you through your order for this race. It is Ethan Lee who will take us from that pole position from Dan Cross, Tom Stevens, Jack Goring, Chris Pauly and Pete Plastow, who was able to bring it back and get back into the lobby. And then after him, it is James King, Craig Ledoux, Glyn Berry, David Wrench, Mark Gladwell, Ollie Wayne, Barron, Weston, Cross, Eastwood, Warmington and Lindsay, who round out the grid for tonight. We're just waiting on, I believe, that is going to be sorry, not David Wrench, that is going to be of James King to grid up. Then we should be underway in a matter of moments, but it is Ethan Lee and Dan Cross who occupy the front row of the grid. This could be fireworks into turn one, and we're underway here in a race two. 20 more minutes of action are now on our hands, and for Ethan Lee, he gets a great launch from pole position and is able to hold on to that race lead through turn one. And now Tom Stevens trying to go side by side with Dan Cross as they make their way down into Cascades. Dan Cross just able to hold on. Chris Pauly's got a dream launch once again. He's already battling with Jack Goring over fourth place, but he's just gone on the way outside line and just dragged wide on those marbles. Craig Ledoux up into seventh place as well. He's had a great start in the AM category, and now as we make our way into the hairpin for the first time, Stevens late on the brake. Goring trying to find a gap to fit the nose of that Porsche Cup car through, but nothing doing thus far, as we now have the run all the way down into the Hislop chicane. The slipstream will be playing a huge factor now as we head up and down the hill. And will Goring be brave enough to send it to the inside of Stevens, who'll surely defend this one, knowing a podium is potentially on the cards in the background. King going side by side with Craig Ledoux, and also David Wrench able to get past there on Glyn Berry, and he might even try an opportunity to find a way past King, but nothing doing there. He's actually off the road there is Josh Lindsay, and I'm seeing he's had some technical issues before the race started. All these binds were unfortunately white, and David Wrench has been able to get past onto James King as they make their way into Druids. And for Jack Goring, still behind Tom Stevens, but is there going to be an opportunity into the final corner? He's looking for it. It's late on the brakes, just can't be brave enough to get this one into that final corner, as actually that was Chris Pauly running wide into the final corner, costing him crucial time, not only to Goring but to Plastow as well. But for Ethan Lee up at the front of the field, a trim getaway, 6/10 clear from Dan Cross behind.
Absolutely, and we mentioned it, didn't we? We thought Ethan Lee might have the chance to do something big here, and that's exactly what he's done. He's set off from Dan Cross. He got the jump, got the really nice kind of defense on the inside of the first corner, and he's kind of stayed there ever since, really. And it's Dan Cross now who's under pressure. We mentioned it as well. Tom Stevens is right up there with Dan Cross. Behind them, though, it is Goring, and it is Pauly, and it is Pete Plaston as well. These three are going to be very, very hungry to try and restore the order of this championship, try and get back up to the top three in the podium places. It's Goring, as we expected, with pace at the moment, trying to get back on the inside of Tom Stevens. He might have a look at it because he's got the run, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it into the corner that time by. As we look as well ahead, you can see that Ethan Lee has lost a lot of time from somewhere, and goodness me, Jack Goring's going to try and go around the outside at the quite side by side between them two, running up towards Druids now. Look at that behind Chris Pauly's going to try and get involved with them. They're still side by side running into Druids, but I think Jack Goring's got the moves on, in which he has, and Tom Stevens now under immediate pressure from both Chris Pauly and Pete Plaston.
Yeah, Pete Plastow is also now going to try and go for a move onto Chris Pauly. He looks to the outside into Lodge corner. It isn't going to fare him too well, I would think, but yes, he just has to back out of things as Pauly will just get a car length in front, as David Wrench is dropping down the order quite considerably. Potentially he got involved in a little kerfuffle further back. He's down to 14th overall, and of course still 10th in class. And for Plastow, he's all over the back now. Chris Pauly, as they make the run down into Cascades. Fastest lap of the race here on lap 2 goes to Dan Cross, who did pull that gap back ever so slightly to Ethan Lee, but it's back up once again. It seems at least strong through the first part of the lap, but then through the remainder of the lap, he struggles a little bit, mainly through the likes of Island Bend. And as we now make our way onto the brakes, into the hairpin once more for Chris Pauly, needs to get past Tom Stevens ASAP, because Jack Goring is already trying to close in onto Dan Cross, gets past Dan Cross, and in the background here, James King off the road at the hairpin, into the wall. I think he's very lucky if he's avoided any suspension damage, and for Jack Goring, I wonder if Dan Cross made a mistake, because he's now up into second, and now we've got side by side between Bury and also Craig Ledoux. This is 4 class lead in the AM category. They're just behind Adam Barron, and for Ledoux, he's able to hold on just about. For Bill Bury, he's certainly trying to apply that pressure. And talk about applying pressure, look at Pauly all over the back of Stevens.
Absolutely, it was good to speak of the newcomer, Ollie. Just Ollie Wayne there, just off the road, up at Knickerbrook, running down in 16th place. We've got Ben Weston and Joshua Lindsay for the second time in 2 races here. They're both in the pits. Meanwhile, look at this. We've got Chris Pauly and Pete Plasto running side by side. Behind them as well is Adam Barron, I think, as well. So them two running really, really competitively. Ethan Lee, meanwhile, still holding on to that race lead ahead of Jack Goring, who's starting to close the gap. But here we are then, a battle of 3 cars. It's Chris Pauly and it's Pete Plasto, and side by side they are now. Running off ahead of them was Tom Stevens, and it is Chris Pauly who loses out. He's going to get it all wrong on the end of the Island Bend, and he's going to smash the barriers. Chris Pauly with a huge mistake as he gets it all loose in the wash of Pete Plasto's Porsche Carrera Cup car. He's pinning over on the internal side of the grass. I don't think he's going to get going again. Indeed, that is drama at the highest order, because Chris Pauly is out of this race, and meanwhile Jack Goring is closing right up to Ethan Lee, Max.
Yeah, Jack Goring is now all over the back of Ethan Lee, and disaster there for Chris Pauly, and Josh Lindsay is also out of the race as well. And for Chris Pauly, that's going to be some big repairs. And for the man who finished second place, was on a hot podium streak for quite a while in this second half of the season, it is all gone away from him. But now Ethan Lee has the opportunity to hold off Jack Goring, as Pete Plasto's been able to get past Tom Stevens in the background, but he's gone too deep, and that's allowed Stevens to get straight back through. And for Tom Stevens, he's back up into 4th place. Goring sets the fastest lap of this race here in race 2, and it's 3 tenths the gap between himself and Ethan Lee. Just look how close that purple 108 machine is to the back of Ethan Lee. Of course, for Goring, he may be able to win the title here tonight. Again, unsure, because of course the drop rounds still have to come into play. But as we now make our way through the left-hander of Island Bend, having to really collect a snap there was Jack Goring, as he looks to the inside, just like what he did onto Chris Pauly in the last race, spins Ethan Lee around, and once again an aggressive lunge as there's smoke out the back of Ethan Lee's car. That's going to be his race done, and for Jack Goring, once again, in a race where he was on for a race victory, just had to play the racing game. He's been too eager, he's gone for a lunge that was never on, and for Ethan Lee, who took pole position thanks to the reverse grid, it's all gone away from him. And for Jack Goring, that again, another rookie error from the championship leader.
I do wonder what Ethan Lee is going to be saying inside that car. I'm holding my head in my hands, because Jack Goring, it didn't work the first race. Why are you doing it again? It's a satellite move up into Island Bend. It's the kind of corner that's prone to that kind of move. But Jack Goring into the race lead at the expense of Ethan Lee, who must be feeling quite upset in that car. He'd done all that work to get it onto pole position, to have a good race 1, set himself up nicely on pole, to defend on the inside and be running in the race lead for all that while. Jack Goring gets it wrong once again, this time with far more dramatic consequences. The race leader is out, and the race leader is now Jack Goring. Dan Cross might have something to say about that, because he's only 6 tenths down. The contact has brought him back into it. He's got this. He's running right onto the grass out of the Cascades. In 3rd place now will be Tom Stevens, and behind them, Pete Plasto has gained significant time there, because of course we have lost Chris Pauly in this race. That means, Max, that we've got an AM class lead battle running in 5th and 6th overall. It's Craig Ledoux and Glenn Bury about a second apart from each other. These two at the front of the race about 6 tenths apart from each other. But it's been an absolutely dramatic race too. We've got the overall lead raging at the moment. The battle for the final podium spot is also underway, big time, between Pete Plastow and Tom Stevens, and the AM class leaders are just in the back of shot.
Yeah, it certainly is now very much for Craig Ledoux and Glenberry an opportunity for their AM class to get one of their best finishes of the season. And you never know, a penalty could come the way of Jack Goring in stewards' reviews after those incidents. So we could even see if these guys are able to stay onto the back here of the likes of Jack Goring, Dan Cross, Thomas Stevens and Plastow. An AM driver taking a 4th place overall. We'll have to wait and see though, but as we now exit out of Lodge Corner, Pete Plastow all over the back of Tom Stevens. He tried it in that corner only a few laps ago, but wasn't able to pull the move off. And he set the fastest lap of this race now on that previous tour as he's making his way into Cascades. He's looking to the left, looking to the right, just no move being made possible. A very tricky place to overtake is Cascades. You've really got to be side by side on the run into the corner. And now as we head into Island Bend, is he going to look for it here? He's going to try and dart it to the inside, show a nose, maybe just put Tom Stevens off ever so slightly. Stevens runs wide. Is Plastow going to throw a lunge to the inside? No, he is not. He's just going to try and take this one on the high line, get the exit that he needs, and now use the slipstream into the Hislop chicane. We're about halfway through race 2 here, and for Jack Goring, he leads the way from 1.1 seconds, and for Plastow, he's still just trying to get closer to Tom Stevens.
Absolutely, but I think he might be able to make the move work because we already saw his pace in race 1 that was good enough to keep the likes of Jack Goring behind, and indeed Chris Pauley as well. So he's closing up, and through Knickerbrook we go on the run towards Druids. It's up a bit of a hill, so we'll lose a bit of momentum, but he's going to pull side by side with Tom Stevens for P3. He's not even going to need Druids. He's going to sail on past up into 3rd position. So great move there from Pete Plastow. That's the power of a good corner exit out of Knickerbrook and out of the Hislop chicane. He's up to P3 with a bit of breathing room back to Tom Stevens. Craig Ledoux is still only about 3 seconds off this pair. But I'd suggest now he's got Pete Plastow onto the podium. The question is, he's got 9 minutes, about 6 laps to go. Can he close up to Dan Cross and start thinking about moving further up the ladder?
Personally, is what is going to be on Pete Plastow's mind, and that could be a 2nd race victory on the cards if Jack Goring does get a penalty from the stewards, because he's not done it just once, has Goring, he's done it twice. Has had an accident at the Melbourne hairpin. Not the Melbourne hairpin, sorry, that's Oulton Park, at the Island Bend hairpin. And unfortunately for, of course, Jack Goring, that gives him a little bit of a sour taste on what could be a championship defining night, with, of course, Will Fawkes and Ben Cullen not being in attendance. And that gap between him and Dan Cross, now 1.5 seconds. Plastow has been able to pull around about 0.6 of a second onto Tom Stevens behind. And for Craig Ledoux, he's dropped Glenberry by about 2 seconds as well. So for Ledoux, he's holding on to a 2nd AM class victory here tonight as it currently stands. It'll be his first time he's done the double here this season. It's a story of what could have been for Craig Ledoux so far in this campaign. He's had the pace, just not the consistency on the road, as we see Adrian Warmington battle away here with Ollie Wayne over what will be 5th place in class. And as they make their way now up Clay Hill and into Druids once more, Ollie Wayne could be looking to the inside. I think Warmington might just have this one covered, and he does.
Indeed, Jack Goring, meanwhile, sets another fast lap of the race. It will be a 1:29.8. We're back into qualifying lap times as here comes Ollie Wayne trying to go down the inside of out of Adrian Warmington through Lodge Corner. Won't be able to make the move happen that time. He has to back off, but it was more of just a little bit of a statement of intent, rather. He's going to have the slipstream up towards the first corner, not quite able to do anything here, so we'll need a good run through turn 1. As we look up just ahead of these two, it is Adam Barron and Robert Cross, the 82 and the 5. We're also with looks like Adam Barron in the back of shot as well. So these two, well, they were running side by side a moment ago, but now that kind of gap's very much opened up, and now it's very much cutting back to Ollie Wayne, and also it is Adam Warmington. Yeah, so Adrian Warmington having to defend from Ollie Wayne at the moment. Wayne might have a look towards Hislop. He's going to have a really strong run. There's no Britain chicane, so he's going to have all the slipstream all the way down to the hairpin. Is he going to go for the lunge? Ollie Wayne, the newcomer to this series, he's going to have a look to the outside line. Thinks better of it and will try and get a good run for Nicker Brook, which he might yet have. I think he does have, in fact. So Ollie Wayne closing up the back of Adrian Warmington once again in this AM class battle. To update you there, Ethan Lee down in 15th, about 11 seconds off the field. So he's still running around. He took that off the faster pair as couldn't speak. Ollie Wayne almost having a look at the inside of Warmington again at Druids. Lodge corner will, I think, just be the same sort of situation. Yes, he'll follow his rival through there, who gets a big time clapper of oversteer on the outside line. That's going to allow Ollie Wayne to draw alongside and maybe have a look into turn one. Is he going to be able to convert it into anything here? He's going to keep his foot in there on the inside. Warmington gives him space, maybe too much space, because he runs out wide, and Wayne's going to draw alongside once again down towards Cascades they go, and Wayne will get the job done. A great bit of driving there. Uses the move I like to call the mind punt, the unforced error from Adrian Warmington, lets Ollie Wayne through up into 12th place, where he finished in race 1. He's got 5 seconds to catch up to Robert Cross ahead, who started to kind of pull away from these two. But here he is, Pete Plastow, closing up on Dan Cross for second, Max.
Yep, certainly has done indeed. A brilliant way to reel in Dan Cross over the past few laps. In the past 5 minutes, he's pulled in that gap of around about 2 seconds to Cross in front of him. And the question is, will he be able to find a move? Of course, he was able to get past Tom Stevens about 5 minutes ago, and from that point onward has been on the charge further forwards. And that gap between Goring and Cross is still around about 3 seconds. So Goring hasn't pulled away as much as I would have imagined since that incident with Ethan Lee, but he still has pulled a healthy buffer over Dan Cross as we now make our way into the right-hander of turn 1. And for Pete Plastow, it's now just all about reeling Dan Cross over the next couple of laps and see what he can potentially do. Of course, 3 drivers are out of this race. Chris Pooley, who we saw go for Island Ben, and Ben Weston and Joshua Lindsay also out of proceedings here in race 2. Craig Ledoux still runs 5th place overall and leading that AM category by around about 4 seconds. And as we now make our way through the hairpin for Pete Plastow, he's close to Dan Cross. I just don't think he'll be close enough. We'll have to wait and see as we make our way into the Hislop chicane.
Absolutely. Oh, I thought for a second he might be pulling out to try a move. It would be a very, very big lunge on the inside as they go through Hislops once again. To remind you that the lead here stands at 3 seconds, so no chance of Pete Plastow repeating his feat unless Goring makes some kind of a mistake. What he can do, though, is try and get a P1 and a P2 in consecutive races, which would be great for his championship. Of course, I don't think he can quite take it ahead of Jack Goring, who will surely be edging closer to that crown. Again, we mentioned as well, no show for Will Foulkes, so it's all advantage Jack Goring at the moment in terms of the championship is concerned. But this battle for second is still raging on with what looks like to be 2 or 3 laps left. Goodness me. Pete Plastow getting a little bit slidey out of the exit of Lodge. He's going to lose a bit of momentum on Dan Cross there. Through turn 1 they will go. But I think really what it is for Pete at the moment is it's that dreaded dirty air, but it's costing him a lot of lap time. He's going to close up somewhat as they run down towards Cascades. There's always the chance that you could get that unforced error that I think it was that Ollie Wayne did earlier in the race. But for now, it's Pete Plastow running third. He's going to have a little look to the inside of Dan Cross. Thinks better of it, though, as he's going to get a bit of a run down towards Island Bend. Again, not quite. So really, you're pushing these Porsche Cup cars absolutely to the fullest. We mentioned it at the top of the show that Oulton Park is the Monaco of the UK. That's proving here, Max, really, in that we're not really seeing a whole load of actual overtaking manoeuvres apart from it, like the Druids, Hislops, and maybe turn 1 as well. Again, a small look from Pete Plastow to try and get past Dan Cross, but he'll have to keep it running until Nicker looking up towards Druids. Again, he needs that good run, doesn't he?
Yeah, he certainly does indeed. And yeah, it's just the overall layout of this circuit, because it's so high speed and of course so difficult to find any opportunity to be late on the brakes where it's really only Hislop's turn 1 and Lodge corner where you can be brave enough on the brakes to throw a lunge into those corners. It's just so difficult to find an overtake. You've really got to work throughout a lap to be able to pull off a move. You've got to just be all the way on the rear heading into that corner, even side by side, to even have a sniff of an opportunity to get a move done. But at the moment here for Pete Plasteau, just has not had the run, had not had the opportunity. I say that as we head down into Cascades, he could look for it here into turn 3. Is it going to be enough as Cross is having to take that wide line, and he's just able to hold on. He's able to take more momentum through the corner, and he's stayed in second place. 1 minute and 20 left to go. This is the penultimate tour here of Oulton Park for the evening, the penultimate tour here of the penultimate round of the season before we head to the Garden of Kent, where we head to Brands Hatch next week for the season finale. But for Pete Plasteau, he is doing everything he can to get this second place back, and all this battling is allowing Jack Goring to get further clear. And it's not really invited Tom Stevens into play just yet, because Plasteau's just not had a clear-cut opportunity as of now.
I did think maybe I expected more from Tom Stevens. I think we saw how good he was in that first race, especially in the late battle against the likes of Ethan Lee. Hasn't quite materialised for him here in terms of a podium. He will be on course to take P4 at the moment, as long as he crosses the line, which will be very good for him. I'm sure he'll be very satisfied with P4, but will have wanted that podium when you look at the likes of Dan Crosser being up there and still putting on this stellar defensive effort against Pete Plasteau, who will go to the inside line and not quite able to make the move, but Dan Cross invites the move because he's gone round wide. Perhaps he was anticipating a lunge from Pete Plasteau. Not quite going to happen on this time as they go on to the final lap. Plasteau's going to send it to the inside of turn 1. Is he going to make the move? Stick Cross out wide, and Plasteau will draw alongside him on the run down to Cascades. It's going to be super, super close. Cross will have the move though, take the tighter line through Cascades, and now onto the corner exit rack. It's going to be so tight running down towards Island Bend.
Yes, it certainly will be indeed, as they now make their way through Island Bend and into the hairpin. Plasteau surely not close enough for a lunge here. I don't think he'll look for it. It's just all about setting himself up for that run into Hislop's. Can he get a good exit out to the hairpin? We know that, of course, Dan Cross has also been very good on this exit as well so far this evening, but he's in that slipstream. He's getting closer to the back of the 263. The 312 is going to look to the inside into the Hislop chicane. This is really the final opportunity. He's late onto the brakes. Cross is later, but he runs deep into the corner, but will have the inside for the second part of the chicane. Plasteau runs wide onto the grass as they head through Knickerbrook now. Cross wide onto the curb. He's going to be compromised on the exit of the corner as they head up Clay Hill now and into Druids. This will surely be Pete Plasteau's corner and will surely be Pete Plasteau's position unless we get the good old up and under from Dan Cross. He's looked for it. He's gone late on the brakes and he's tried to get it underneath Dan Cross, and they're going to still be side by side as they head down into Lodge Corner. It's going to be Jack Goring who wins race 2 on the road, but it's all about second place here and who could potentially pick up that race win after penalties. It's Plasteau out of the final corner. He's able to take P2 on the final lap. A valiant effort from Dan Cross, unfortunately brought to an end on the final tour, and it's Craig Ledoux who for the first time this season makes it back-to-back victories in the AM class. He does the double here in Oulton Park here tonight, and for him that's a best finish as well for an AM driver of 5th place overall. A spectacular performance from Craig Ledoux and Glenn Burry to be 5th and 6th overall in that one, but for Jack Goring, a dominant end thanks to that battling between Plasteau and Cross. But certainly that race victory under a lot of controversy here, Thomas, after that incident with Ethan Lee.
Absolutely. I think, you know, it could well be said that Goring primarily won the race off of that incident. I think he probably would have had the pace on Lee, really, as we see Lee come across the line now. I'm sure he'll be bitterly disappointed. He's weaving on the straight and just plants into the tyre barrier. Perhaps that's his frustration getting the better of him. But I mean, you've got to really sympathise there. It was a move that was borderline, borderline kind of not on really. But in the end, that's how it will happen. Jack Goring will take the victory. A great battle, I must be said. I was squirming in my seat at the last lap action between Pete Plasteau and Dan Cross, who will finish just 3/10 apart from one another. Jack Goring will take yet another race when Tom Stevens will come in fourth. As you mentioned, Max, a brilliant result for the AM drivers here. Craig Ledoux will take the AM class victory and P5 on the road, as with Glenbury following in behind by a marking 4 seconds. Then comes, I think, 3 more pro runners. James King gets past David Wrench, who will best his race 1 finish by taking P8. Adam Barron will get a top 10, as will Mark Gladwell, 30 seconds down on the leaders. Robert Cross finishes in 11th place. Ollie Wayne, 2 12th place finishes for him on his debut in the AFVRC. A great result for him in the opening weekend. Adrian Warmington then will get 13th, and then it is the guys who had stricken cars or hit problems for one reason or another. Ethan Lee, 14th overall after a gutting incident there with Jack Goring. I'm sure he'll be frustrated with how it panned out. Scott Eastwood then 15th. Chris Pawley, again, how will he be feeling? We spoke to him, of course, in the pre-race interview. He said he didn't want to do anything silly, but he's gone and put it in the barriers at Ireland Bend. I suspect he just kind of got it all just crossed up on the corner entry. Ben Weston and Joshua Lindsay will complete the field in P17 and P18.
Yes, they certainly will indeed. 3 non-finishers from that one, which is disappointing to see, but things do happen. But that is going to be a race 2 at Oulton Park. Goring takes it on the road, but we'll have to wait for Stewart's inquiries to see what happens there. But we do have 3 drivers waiting for interviews here tonight. And let's start off with the man who's picked up AM's best overall finish of the season and took that AM class race victory, Craig Ledoux. So, hello, Craig. Can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Good, good. Well, first of all, congratulations on doing the double here this evening. First time you've done it this season. Just talk us through the whole race 1 and race 2. How did things go?
I mean, it's probably been my most consistent race week, to be honest. So I'm really quite pleased to have finally put together 2 whole entire races. I mean, realistically, I just slotted into just behind, the sort of the top 10, I guess, of the pros, and just tried to keep on going with consistent laps. And that's really where it went. There was one scare, I think, unfortunately, in the second race, and James King came off significantly worse than I did for my error. But out of the whole race, that's pretty much the only incident. So I'm pretty pleased with that, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a very good evening from you overall. Of course, I think with that P5 as well here, Craig, you also take the best placed AM driver for the season so far in our overall standing. So I bet that's something that you're quite happy with as well, a P5 overall in that second race.
My worst lap of the race was after my crew chief turned around and went, "You're P5," and it caught me so unawares because I had no idea I was P5, and then all of a sudden I got very, very nervous and I had to calm myself back down. It took me a lap and a half to start putting together a decent lap again.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn was also putting you under a lot of pressure at that point, so I bet it was a bit of nerves from him behind as well. But of course, you kind of, for a majority of race 1 and race 2, were in a little bit of no man's land. It was very much, you're in a little bit of a world of your own. You're about 2 seconds clear of the car behind. In race 1, you were just behind that battle of about 4 or 5 cars in the pro category. But was it kind of, did it make life a little bit easier, the fact that you were just by yourself? You could just concentrate on your own driving?
It absolutely did. It felt there were certain parts where it felt like a practice session, and the only time I really got worried was when I was coming up to the back end of that group of 4 cars in the first race, because being in the amateur category, I had no particular need to battle with them, but equally I didn't want them slowing themselves down and me down and allowing Glyn to catch up behind me either. But at that point, I think there was only sort of 3 minutes and a couple of laps left. So at that point, I was quite happy just to sit and watch it happen and take the amateur win, to be quite honest.
No, yeah, I bet that seemed like a very good strategy, and it did work out for you in the end. And of course, Oulton Park is a very unique circuit, of course, with it being so narrow and so many high-speed corners. Coming from an AM driver's point of view, just how difficult of a track is this to drive, especially in this Porsche Cup car?
I think we do a practice session every Sunday, and I think it must have taken me about 25 minutes to put a single lap together that didn't involve me falling off the track somewhere. The last corner in particular requires, for me anyway, requires such careful throttle control. Otherwise, it will just spit you out, and it won't even say thank you at the end. You will just spin. And there are so many corners that are like that. And if you hit a bump or a curb just slightly wrong, it bites you, and it bites you really, really hard. But I got to say that makes it a hugely enjoyable. And let's not beat around the bush. I got a P5 because other people had incidents. So yeah, I really like the circuit.
Yeah, it is a very fun circuit indeed. And yeah, we saw plenty of drivers make that mistake at the final corner as well. And yeah, you may have got P5, Craig, because of other incidents, but you had to be there. You had to be there to get the result. So, yeah, of course, one last one from me before I hand you over to Thomas if he's got any questions for you. But of course, we head to Brands Hatch next week for round 10, the final round of the season. Of course, a roller coaster of a circuit. What are your aims around there? Are you confident around Brands, or is it a circuit that might potentially catch you out?
You know what? There are circuits that I thought I would do really well at that I didn't, and there are circuits that I thought I would be rubbish at, and I wasn't. So I've got no idea. I know Brands. I've raced Brands before in different cars. I think, to be honest, with the win last week and the 2 wins this week, I'd just like to keep the momentum going, and I'm trying to work on my consistency more than anything else. So as long as I'm consistent wherever that is in the pack, that's what I'm really trying to work on.
Well, hopefully that consistency does continue, Craig. And yeah, congratulations on this evening. And Thomas, do you have any questions for Craig?
Just on that race 2 win, I mean, you mentioned it yourself. You were kind of surprised to be running P5. When you're in that kind of unexpected position, of course, you kind of gain from other people's misfortune. But you mentioned you did manage to calm yourself down after a lap and a half. What was the process of when you're in that kind of surprising situation? How do you bring yourself back to just keep moving forward?
So that's a really great question. I think it's just I literally had to sort of verbally out loud tell myself to calm back down and just focus on the next apex. To be honest. I think I was lucky at that point. You sort of when you get on the long straight, just before the shell oil hairpin, that's sort of a moment to just take a breath and go, okay, actually, you know what? It allowed me to look at the timesheets and see, where everyone was behind me, and to just take stock and go, okay, nothing's changed. I'm just randomly in 5th place that I wasn't necessarily aware of, and then just crack on with the laps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, what is it? Back-to-back class wins for you. That must be personally quite satisfying.
Oh, I'm over the moon. It's the most consistent race week I've ever had. So I normally stoof it in at least once.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Craig. That was a spectacular evening for you. And yeah, it's something to be proud of. Your most consistent evening, and hopefully that continues into Brands.
Thanks very much, gents. Have a great evening.
You too. Congratulations. Enjoy your night. Right, so that was, of course, your AM winner of Craig. We shall now head over to the man who finished 3rd in that second race, Dan Cross, as we now bring him in for interview. Hello, Dan. Can you hear us?
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. But, of course, congratulations on P3 there in race 2. But just talk us through your entire evening. How did you find the first and second race?
Honestly, it was probably it was absolutely astounding. I've never felt so like this before in this car. I don't have words for it, honestly. I'm still kind of recovering from the shock, if you like. I wasn't expecting to perform this well at all. Thinking I was going to be lucky to finish in the top 10, to be honest.
You certainly did outclass that expectation, getting a P3 on the road as well in race 2. But quickly going back to, of course, race 1, we saw in the last few laps you had a little scuffle with Ethan Lee. That took you away from the pole position for the reverse grid in the end. But there was that slight contact heading into the Hislop chicane, and that caused Lee to go straight on. Was that you caught out by Lee's braking, or did he move ever so slightly under braking? What happened there?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've already discussed it with Ethan privately, and we're both in agreement that that was a total accident. From my perspective, it felt as though he was reacting a little bit to my looks to overtake him, and then as I was trying to focus on him and avoiding his car to avoid a collision, I was focused on his car rather than where to brake, so I completely missed my braking marker. I think I'll check the replay, and I think it's my fault for going into the back of him. So I'm entirely at fault for what happened between Ethan and I there.
It's unfortunate to see, but at least you've made amends on that one. But back to race 2, just of course you started second place in that one, and you seem to have really good pace. You got passed by Jack Goring. I mean, it must have been a little disheartening though, with that second place on the cards, to then lose it on the final lap to Pete. But of course, a podium's a podium. Just how just difficult was it to lose that P2 on the final lap?
Honestly, it really wasn't difficult at all. I was saying to myself at the start of the race that a podium, regardless of what step it was going to be a fantastic result either way. I'll be honest, when I saw Pete overtake Tom about halfway through the race, my heart did sink a little bit because I kind of got my hopes up a little bit for a P2 finish. But I knew that Pete had pace over me by about half a second to a second a lap, and there was no way he was really going to stay behind me for very long. So I didn't have any problem at all giving up the position or losing the position on the final lap. And I was just actually quite grateful that Pete didn't really try and force the issue much until like the last lap, where he made it very safe and very easy to. I mean, I didn't make it easy for him. But it was some great racing, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not disappointed at all.
Yeah, certainly was a great battle between you and Pete on that final lap. You gave each other enough racing room, but still battled very aggressively. And of course, on that front of being at such a high, of course, in P2 for a majority of the race, was it kind of a nosebleed moment when you first got into really knowing that you were consistently in P2 after those first few laps? Did it take a lap and a half to kind of just calm yourself down? Did it just ever really hit where you were on the field?
A lap and a half. Try 7. I mean, I think I was shaking for the better part of half that race. And what makes it worse is that Oulton Park is my home track in real life. I've been to visit that track goodness knows how many times to watch live racing, and it means so much to get a decent, well, I say decent, a podium finish at a track that I've visited so often in reality. Yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon, and I was very, very nervous, and it took me a long time to calm down.
Even with all that shake, he was still able to pull off a great performance, and yeah, it certainly adds that little bit more sentiment to things as well, getting the first podium here. And of course, we head to Brands Hatch next week for the season finale. Are you confident around there, or is that a circuit where it's just a little bit of on the kind of bogey track side, a circuit you're not particularly a fan of?
I wouldn't say I'm confident, no. I am, I'd say competent, if not confident. Certainly those, I can't recall the corner names off the back of my head, but the fast right-handers on the back end of the GP circuit, I can never seem to find pace that other people can through those corners. But the first part of the lap around the Indy part of the track, I'm quite confident with. It's just, there's so much time to be gained in the back half of the track that I struggle with. But we'll wait and see. I wasn't expecting to do well here, and maybe I might see the tables turn.
Of course, came into this week with a P10 on, well, lucky to get P10 on your mind. You finished it with a podium, so you never know what could happen next week. But that's going to be all from me. Thomas, do you have any questions for Dan before we let him?
Just
join
about
in?
the pressure that Pete was putting on you right at the end there. Did you think you had it in you to go all the way and take the PC? But also, just what's it like being that under pressure when he's like right on your ear for the whole lap? It must have been quite something.
Do you know what? I think because I knew how much pace Pete had, I don't think I felt as much pressure as I would have felt if it was, say, Tom behind me. Just purely because I knew that I was never going to make it difficult for him to get past me. I didn't try and defend the position at all. Don't get me wrong, it was it was intimidating having his bumper like so close in the rearview mirror at times. But just knowing deep down that I was never really going to put up that much of a fight, just kind of took a little bit of the pressure off.
Congratulations, Dan, on that P3, and yeah, hopefully we see you back on the roster, or at least have a really good result in Brands next week. So yeah, go enjoy the rest of the evening. Congratulations.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you for joining us. So that was Dan Cross. There is one last driver we will interview here tonight, and that is, of course, Jack Goring. Be interesting to see his views on some of the incidents tonight. But hello, Jack. Can you hear us?
Yep. Yeah. Hello.
Well, of course, congratulations on that race win in race 2 and that podium in race 1. Just talk us through the evening. A few incidents here and there, but still overall some good pace shown from you.
Yeah, it was an eventful night, if I'm honest. Yeah, Heat 1 with Chris. We've had a chat afterwards about it. It was sort of like, he thinks like he did something wrong. I thought I did something wrong, but it's sort of like just a little come together. I gave him the position back afterwards because I felt bad after it. But ultimately, we had decent pace today. I was quite happy with that. I was a bit surprised at Oulton because I didn't feel comfortable with the track at all coming into this. But yeah, decent result.
Yeah, it certainly was indeed. And of course, in that race 1, you got close to the back of Paulie once again, and you went a little bit wide through Lodge. And I mean, of course, Will Fawkes and Cullen weren't here tonight as well. So I think you were a little bit more comfortable in the fact that they weren't here, in a sense, as there was a little bit of pressure lifted off your shoulders, especially when it comes to that title?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I was obviously expecting to be racing them tonight, and then I saw going into qualifying they weren't here, and I was like, oh well, it's a good opportunity to put some points on the table, and yeah, I guess it was yeah, quite uplifting, but also it's like you got to maximise it when they're not at the event. So yeah.
Capitalise it, especially in race 2. And just talking about race 2 as well, you got into the lead after getting past Ethan Lee. And what happened in that accident as well? I just saw in the chat you said that he reacted when you went for the move. Was it just you were going for the lunge and then he just kind of moved a little bit under braking? He took a little jig to the right?
Yeah, I guess it's probably to do with the nature of the reverse grid, especially at a track like Oulton Park. Like, you get some drivers which obviously with the missing front runners we had quite a few from like the mid pack that were up there as well. So it was like you're going for moves which on like people like Will or anyone else who's like used to being up the front, they sort of expect a move to come. But yeah, just like I went for the move and just saw the car jerk to the right, and I couldn't do anything at that point. I've already committed. But yeah, other than that, it was a racing incident, but you know, my side bias or whatever. But yeah, it was sort of, I felt I had made a good move, but yeah, it was a bit touch and go.
Just have to see what the stewards maybe have to say about it, but it could be just the fact that because he reacted, that's the whole reason the incident occurred. We didn't really get too much of a great angle on it. We were looking at you from somewhat of a side angle, so we didn't see any any movement from Ethan. But after you got into that race lead, you just started to pull that gap further and further away. Was it just that from that point onwards, no mistakes, just use the clean air, use the gap you've got to the car behind, and just keep a decent gap to Dan Cross?
Yeah, it was also, say if there were, obviously with the incident, if there was like a 5-second penalty or something, it was trying to push and get that 5 seconds up the road, which I did in the end. I think it was like 6.5 seconds or something like that. So, it was just maximum push to the end, really. By that point, I'd sort of felt a bit more comfortable with the car and didn't have the damage like I did in race 1, so could maximise the pace.
Certainly did indeed. And of course, when it comes to that championship aspirations as well, I'm not too sure if you've wrapped it up tonight. I think it still depends on the maths with the drop rounds, but of course still a very, very strong swing in the championship, a good points haul for yourself as we head into Brands next week. Are you confident in the title, and are you confident around Brands that you can pick up the title if it's still on the cards the next time out?
I mean, I feel better about the title now that Will wasn't there tonight. Definitely. I mean, that's a big chunk of points that I've either pulled back or leapfrogged him with. So, yeah, it's definitely it's going to be a fun battle at Brands Hatch. It's going to be tight, I can tell already. But now that everyone's like used to the car and know all its quirks and stuff, so it's going to be a close fight.
Certainly will indeed. Good luck for your fight next week. And Thomas, do you have any questions for Jack before we let him go?
I think, the main thing I saw was that I had a lot of fun with watching you and Chris Pawley go at it in race 1 and over qualifying. I think from us, from our end on the broadcast, it had looked like you guys were having a lot of fun there. It was a great battle to watch. I mean, what are you, when you're in those kind of situations, are you thinking as you're enjoying the moment, or are you very much focused on getting the OZAG? I mean, you had some incredible pace out there this weekend.
Yeah, I think with race 1, I was happy sitting behind Chris. I knew our times were close in qualifying. I mean, it was like he would do a fast lap, I would do a fast lap, and it kept going like that through quali. So I think, the race, I went into it after having a terrible start again. I decided, you know what, I'm going to sit behind, and then I'd noticed, I was like, well, there's a move on here, and then that's when the sort of accident happened. But yeah, it's always good to race someone like Chris. He's clean, he knows what he's doing from real life racing, so it's very enjoyable when you get to race people like that.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. But congratulations, Jack, on that race 2 result, and yeah, hopefully the best of luck in your championship chances next week.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening. But that is all from the driver's side, I believe. I'll quickly just check the interview room, and no, there's no one waiting for an interview. So that is going to be all for the interviews here this evening, and it's going to be now, of course, the time here, Thomas, to decide the driver of the day, the final part, the final part of the stream, of course, Thomas, the driver of the day vote. Who's your driver of the day?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question. I think for the AM class heroics, I am going to go for Craig, just because he said it himself. Consistency was the key to that weekend. It's a sweep of both AM class wins in that weekend. Brilliant couple of races for him. Getting that P5 as well will definitely help his confidence around Oulton Park. And I think for him, if you look at both the classes that we had here today, if you look at both of them, I think he's probably the best of them all.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100% agree. So Craig Ledoux will be driver of the day here this evening after his most consistent event of the season and picking up the AM class's best overall result. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it from the penultimate round here at Oulton Park. One last event to go this season. That will be next week at Brands Hatch. Of course, a personal favourite of mine being my local circuit. But Thomas, what can we expect for a title showdown at, of course, one of the most historic circuits in the UK.
I'll sum it up in 4 words. Everything here plus more. It's going to be absolutely brilliant, absolutely chaotic, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting one indeed. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be all for tonight. So make sure you join us next week for the season finale and what could be an epic title showdown between the likes of Cullen, Fulks and Jack Goring. It's all to play for in the championship still. We shall see you next week for the final round. Stay safe, stay well, thank you, and bye-bye.